you mentioned Ferrari, and I'd like to pivot our conversation there. A good result overall for Ferrari. They seem to get a grip on strategy and their race pace in Austria. Charles Leclerc on the podium, P2. Carlos Sainz, after being penalized from Aston Martin's protest 5 hours later, he dropped down to sixth place, but still a decent amount of points for Ferrari. Nate, do we feel like Ferrari can contend with Red Bulls in Silverstone?
It's a good question. I think you're right to say that the strategy for the last two races, Canada and Austria, obviously in qualifying in Canada, we were kind of questioning the decision, but there has seemingly been a bit of a step in terms of the calls seem a bit less erratic. It seems like there's a bit more confidence internally in that, and I think that makes a big difference. If Ferrari are going into races and they know that they can call the right things, I think that does make a difference. Whether they can be the closest challenger to Red Bull, I think that's all relative. But at certain races, they're turning up at the moment. I mean, they've got such a quick qualifying car. I mean, Charles Leclerc was so close in qualifying to getting Max. Really, really awesome lap, actually, from Charles. If you actually go and watch the onboard, just how much he was pushing it at the end of qualifying on the Friday. So, yeah, I think they'll be up there. But again, it's difficult. It's so difficult to call at the moment, that gap, that group behind Red Bull, because we see it, don't we? We've got Aston, Ferrari, Mercedes. Then the next week, Aston and Mercedes can drop away. Ferrari can come back up again. So, I think that Ferrari are in a good spot, and I think Charles, especially at the moment, seems to be finding his groove in terms of how he's driving, how he's racing. And I always feel like a happy Charles Leclerc is a Charles Leclerc who's in form, and that's never a bad thing. So yeah, I think all the signs are there that they're going to have maybe not a race-winning weekend, but definitely a strong one.
When you look at the year in total, who do you feel like's driven better, Laurence, Sainz or Leclerc?
I think it's the same old story there in that. Well, I think Leclerc is ultimately the better driver, the faster driver. He's had a lot of bad luck and things go wrong this year and made some mistakes. But I'd still say Leclerc is the better of the two drivers there. And of course, when they've had a chance to get podiums, which is Baku and Austria, they're the only podiums they've had this year. He's been the one that's taken them. So I think Leclerc, still remains the team leader there, and also the guy that I think the whole team really feels like it needs to impress and work hard to keep. Whereas it sounds like Carlos is already working on a new contract, where Charles seems to be keeping his options a little bit more open because he wants to know what he can do when his contract expires at the end of next year, I believe. So yeah, it's a funny dynamic there, but they do seem to be making progress both with the car. Again, this situation. Let's go back to launches again. I remember going to Maranello and them talking about, well, of course we're going to be fighting for a championship. We are Ferrari. That's what we do. That's why we exist in Formula One. And they are, couldn't really be further away when you look at, the championship and who's ahead of them, Aston Martin and Mercedes. Like, no one expected Ferrari to have, three teams ahead of them at this stage of the season. So it's still not quite good enough, but I think it is starting to come together. And back to that point Nate made about the strategy, they did make some big changes in the strategy department. They got rid of Inaki Rueda at the top of it, and I think he got put into a different position, but he got taken off the pit wall making decisions straight away. But there was also a huge amount of work that went on behind the scenes. It was redeveloping a lot of the software and the systems and the mechanisms by which they make decisions, and kind of looking at why they were making the wrong decisions, not just the guy putting the finger on the button. All the systems that go into developing that decision on the pit wall. They've had to go back through those and kind of redefine them and find new ways of working. And inevitably, that's going to take time. I think it's good to see those kind of things click, because as soon as they do get a competitive car like they had at the start of last year, any mistake like that is just devastating, as we saw at the start of last year with the mistakes they made.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.